Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, the number one place to discover ideas, methods, and the mindsets behind the people who are solving real problems in the real world. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and I want to let you know something. This show is for anyone who's ever struggled to explain their value. What I mean is, whether you've struggled to communicate clearly or you want to feel confident in the way that you think and also express yourself. Today, the conversation is going to be about something deeper than words. It's about clarity, credibility, and intellectual confidence. And I have the absolute pleasure of welcoming Tiffany Markman. Now, Tiffany, how are you doing today?
Very good. Thank you. Very happy to be here with you.
Absolutely. Well, I can't wait to jump into this episode and, talk communication and be clear. Before I even start mincing my words, I have to ask Tiffany. I think I was reading somewhere that some days you actually go from speaking to hundreds of professionals in a keynote and you end up, syringe feeding a baby bat the size of your thumb in the evening. Tell us, what is the connection between those two seemingly different spaces, but have true meaning to you?
The bat rehabilitation is a hobby. I get that it's a total weird hobby. Especially, I think a lot of people are afraid of bats. I started working with African microbats, which is the teeny tiny ones, about 5 years ago. And I rescue and rehabilitate the orphaned and injured ones, and I actually specialize in amputees, so those that have only one wing. I didn't think it had anything to do with my actual job, which is writing and speaking, but I've realized that most speakers have to have quite a healthy ego to get on stage and talk to audiences. And there's nothing more humbling for your ego than a baby bat who thinks that you are nothing special except a food source, and who will keep you up every 1.5 hours for 12 weeks to be syringe fed by hand and then jump, off your hand into the sky and disappear without so much as a thanks very much. So, I guess they are connected. I never thought so, but I guess they are connected. I guess the bats make me humble, even in the speaking community where humility is not something we are known for.
Absolutely. And humility is such a virtue. And for those that are watching right now, if you really want to know how humility is and what it actually means, what Tiffany just explained is humility personified, because Tiffany herself is an award-winning wordsmith, trainer, and speaker who's helped over 36,000 professionals and has worked with hundreds of brands across 16 countries. But what really fascinates me about her work is she just doesn't help people to write better or sound better. She actually helps them think better. Now, if you combine the work that she does behind the scenes and what she also does to help people, the one thing that struck me there was some of the bats are amputees. They've lost an arm or a leg, and that's their source of survival. How for the people that stand up on stage, they're coming from a place of lived experience. They must have lost something, and all you're doing is putting them back together again, or syringe feeding them with clarity.
I think people who get on stage have often lost something, but I think the reason they're on stage is because they got something else. So I think it's a loss and a gain. I don't think you can build a career out of speaking unless you've gained something back after the loss. Otherwise, that's not a good story. So maybe there is something there from the bats. I don't know. I've never ever thought about the bats as connected to my work, but it's really nice to think that everything is integrated with everything else, isn't it? And bats are also, I often use bats as an analogy for copywriting because they are quite fussy. And I think that those standards are something we should apply to everything we produce. I think we should be quite discerning and discriminating about what we put out there into the world, just like bats are.
Absolutely. Right. So before people think this is a wildlife show or anything to do with Batman in the end. Tiffany, take us back to the beginning. Before your business existed, what was life like? Who was Tiffany? You were working in publishing, and what did that world bring to you that you're now bringing to the table now?
So the story begins slightly before my first job. I started working when I was still in high school. Actually, I started writing for money for a couple of friends of my mom's. They needed some copy done, and I was 16 and I knew how to string a good sentence together. So that was the very first paid work I ever did. I was in 11th grade. And I worked through the night and skipped a double maths class the next day because I was tired. So it was no surprise to anyone when I left school, completed my degrees, and then went into publishing full time. It seemed like a very obvious segue. My first job was an absolute dream job for me. I was working at a small independent publishing house. We published books. I was the junior editor. There were only 4 staff. I was the junior editor. The senior editor left. I became the senior editor within a year, which was amazing, but also ridiculous. I was an editor of a small publishing company by the time I was 23. I had no idea what I was doing, but it all worked out quite well. And I loved this job. It was the best job ever. But I left unexpectedly when I was 24 because I discovered that there were unethical business practices happening in the business. And because I had a senior role, I felt like I could potentially be held liable for these things, even though I hadn't known about them. And I felt like there was a good chance at 23 I was going to get scapegoated or, blamed for everything. So I packed up my poultry goods into a box, the box that when you order paper for the office for the printer, that box that comes in, packed all my stuff into that, put it into my car, went home. I wrote a letter of resignation. I had nothing lined up, not a job, not an interview, not a side hustle, nothing. But the only thing I knew how to do really well was write and edit because I'd been doing that for those 2 years and throughout my degree and while in high school. So I sent out a spam email. This was 2005, and you could get away with that in those days. I sent out a spam email to everyone I knew and everyone in my inbox saying, I'm available on a freelance basis until I find another job in publishing. That was the goal. I was going to go straight into another publishing company. But within 3 months, I was too busy to go for interviews. And within 6 months, I had doubled my previous salary, and that was 21 years ago. So wow. I never went for a single interview, never went back into publishing, and I've been self-employed ever since.
Absolutely. And congratulations on that sort of outcome. Now, Tiffany, when you were speaking, you did mention 16. That's when you were writing. Some of us at the age of 16, and I'm speaking for myself especially, I don't think I even knew how to write my own name at that age. So was there any special education that you attended that would have put you in such a, clear driver's seat, so to speak, at that age?
It was a combination of things. The first is that I was an only child. And so if there are any only children out there or any parents of only children, you will know that we have to keep ourselves entertained. All the adults in our lives are busy and working, and you got to build fun for yourself. And I, at 4 years old, taught myself to read because I was bored and lonely. And I had no one to play with. And I was staying with my grandmother at the time, and she was baking, and she couldn't stop and teach me how to read. So I taught myself to read using cookbooks. But I come from a very book reading family. So I think the love of the word started there. And then I had the privilege of an exceptional education. I don't come from financial resources. I'm the only child of a single parent, a single working mom. My father passed away when I was small. And so I was a scholarship kid, but that scholarship gave me a magnificent primary school and high school education. And I then got a bursary for an undergraduate degree and a postgraduate degree as well. So just, a free but exceptional education. And those things seem to have cumulatively led to the ability to write and a love for reading and writing that I then made a career out of. It certainly wasn't the intention, but it was a combination of privilege, luck, and hard work.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for taking us there, because at the end of the day, half of these things we never really know when it's happening, but in retrospect, you could always, connect the dots looking backwards. Now, since you have also mentioned your family status where you did say, you were brought up with a single parent, was there any expectation for you to excel in any of the endeavors that you know partook in?
I look, I don't know how much you know about Jewish mothers. So I have a Jewish mother and I am a Jewish mother. And the expectation of Jewish mothers is that their children are magnificent creatures who will only ever excel and change the world and become leaders and presidents, and show-stopping greatness is the basic expectation of a Jewish mother. So mine fully believed that I would change the world. And I believe the same about my daughter, who's now 14. It's a Jewish mother thing. They think that we are exceptional, and so we believe that we are exceptional because our mothers told us that we were. So what was there pressure? No. But did I know that she thought that I was spectacular? Yes. Her biggest disappointment, I think, has been that I didn't marry Prince William, because she believed that I was worthy of him. And when he married Kate, she was devastated, even though I'd already been married for several years by then and am quite a bit older than him. She was devastated. She felt that I was, destined for royal greatness, and that I was robbed of my queenly rights when he married someone else. But it is what it is. So, so I think with that kind of confidence in you, you can only ever turn out okay.
Absolutely. And you know what I like about that is, when we don't have our own confidence in ourselves, we can borrow other people's beliefs in us. And just the fact that there was that sort of joke around you working into royalty, so you could have actually have been practicing how the princess writes messages to everybody else in their domain and things of that nature. So that's quite interesting. Now, you painted a picture of walking out of the office with the box full of paper, and that's something that a lot of people watch in movies, and I actually saw that as you said that. But that was your dream job, and obviously, as you said, there was unethical things that were happening behind the scenes. It would have been a very big decision. What was actually happening internally for you at this particular time, for you to actually, like you said, you walked away with no prospects, no hope, nothing? You just did not want to be there.
I think we must never underestimate the astonishing power of fear. I think when you come from financially straitened circumstances like I did, you have two sort of conflicting drivers at any one time. The one is the fear of poverty, which will compel you to stay in positions you may not otherwise choose to stay in out of pressure, financial pressure. The other is you never want to get in trouble. You never want to be bad. You want to, when I was quite young, we had the sheriff of the court come and repossess our furniture. And I've always been quite intimidated by authority and the idea that a man in a car can come and take away my stuff. So the fear of poverty sort of fought with the fear of being a bad person, and those two things collectively overwhelmed my want and desire to stay in that job. If I stayed, the sheriff might come and arrest me because I was the editor of the business. And if I left, I might be poor, and I think I would rather take the chance of being poor. Anyway, the other thing I must also mention is that I was 24. So I wasn't married. I didn't have children. I didn't own a house. I didn't have any financial obligations compelling me to stay. I think if that were to happen to me now with a family and a husband and a home and people relying on me financially, it would be a very different decision. But I went back home to my mom and, lived with her. And that was a soft landing for me. I could go home and live there and eat there and sleep there, and so it was a combination of fears, I think, that pushed me to do something very out of character. I'm not an impulsive person. I don't make decisions rashly. I don't like risk. I think about things carefully, and I make lists of pros and cons, and I'm very geeky. but I had to get out of there, and I was more afraid of the consequences of staying than the consequences of leaving.
Absolutely. And obviously, like you said, there's a time when the energy around a place no longer, fits our presence in it. Then obviously, I think you would have done the right thing. And looking at where you landed, obviously you were not as upside down as a bat would have been, but you literally landed on your feet because you went on and started your own gig. Walk us through what it was like, because you did mention you sent out a whole bunch of emails, but by the time people started responding, you had already gotten your runway in and stuff like that. Tell us about sort of the jobs that you were doing, or were you worried that maybe this is not going to pan out, pun intended?
I think if I'd stopped to think about what could have gone wrong, I wouldn't have been brave enough to actually do it. I would have gone and got a waitressing job or, something. But I didn't stop to think. I just, very out of character for me, I just sort of jumped and the net appeared. Do I believe that always happens? No, but in this case it did. So what actually transpired was I packed up my little box, I put it in my little car, I drove home. I said to my mom, I've left. I've written a letter of resignation. And she said, well, what are you going to do? And I was like, well, I'm going to tell everyone I know that I can help them on a freelance basis. And so because I, at that stage, didn't know what I was doing, I did everything. I edited, I proofread, I wrote stuff from scratch. I designed a menu for a local beauty spa, a menu of services. I wrote press releases. I did all sorts of weird stuff that I don't do anymore. I ghost wrote a book for someone. And I also started studying online. So this was 2005. And it was just the beginning of when you could start to learn how to do things online for free. So I taught myself search engine optimization.
All right.
And that became a huge thing later on. I became a web copywriter who specialized in SEO, both organic and back-end SEO in those days. And that really was a big thing at the time. So I did a lot of baby websites. And looking back at some of the copy I wrote then, it was awful. It was like wordy and heavy and not great. But I mean, it was 2005. The rules were different. The interesting thing is that I went to see a business coach. I'd never been for coaching before. I had no idea what coaching wasn't really a thing then. But I took 500 Rand, which is probably the equivalent today, 20 years later, of about 1,500 Rand, which is about, I don't know, $100 US, which in those days was just a vast, vast sum of money. And I took this 500 Rand and I went to see a business coach and I paid her for an hour of her advice. And her advice was, go on your own.
Right.
And I remember getting in the car after that advice and thinking, I cannot believe I paid someone this much money for that bad advice. Can she not see that I would never go on my own? I don't have the personality for entrepreneurship. I'm not a self-starter. I like to have a boss and a team, and I like to be a cog in a system. I just thought that was the worst advice ever, and I was devastated that I'd wasted so much money on getting such bad advice. But she obviously knew me better than I knew myself, because within weeks of that coaching session, I was effectively self-employed, and I've remained self-employed ever since. I've never had a traditional job since that job. That was the one and only job I've ever had.
So
she was right about me and I was wrong about me. Who knew? So sometimes you have to not think too hard. I think if I'd stopped to think about what I was doing, I wouldn't have done it.
I think this is the best 500 Rand you've ever spent in your entire life, because now
it absolutely was. I wish I remembered who this woman was, because I would buy her flowers.
500 Rand worth of flowers. How
more?
Would that be
significantly more than 500 Rands worth of flowers?
Absolutely. So from what you're saying, I'm hearing something like confidence and credibility are not the same thing. Because even though you were confident in what you were doing, you had been the editor, the leader of everything else, but you felt you were not credible enough to go at it by yourself. And I feel like that's a very powerful sort of distinction. And I think you tackled that in the way that you present your work and people. Maybe can you try and explain the difference in that, sort of distinction?
Sure. So confidence, I think, is in us, right? It's innate. Credibility is outside of us. So confidence is how you feel about yourself. Credibility is how you think other people think of you. And even if you are confident in your skills, you can be unconfident in your positioning or in your capacity to succeed. And one of the things I speak about a lot on stage is imposter syndrome, which is a lack of self-esteem or a sense that you are a fraud and that the world will eventually find out. And that is very much the tension between confidence and credibility. It's, I'm more or less confident in my competence, but I'm not, but I either have credibility that I don't deserve or I don't feel credible. And I was young, I was 24. So I knew that I knew what I was doing, but I didn't think it was worth anything on its own. You know, I didn't think it was something I could sell to the market or that the market would sustainably want to pay for. So there was confidence, but I didn't feel there was credibility. And so there wasn't confidence in my ability to make and sustain a living. The interesting thing is that confidence grows with practice. It's like a muscle. So the more you just do, the more you get a sense that you can. And the less you do, the less you get a sense that you can. So, I don't want to oversimplify what is a very complex issue, but I do think that in the absence of confidence, discipline does a lot. If you just get up and do the work every day without thinking too much, eventually the confidence grows organically, and then the credibility comes with it.
I like that, because in your line of work, and considering you're writing on a vast array of subjects, you don't necessarily need to be the expert within that sort of realm. You just need to be confident in the way you string the words and putting it out there and things of that nature. Now, how does that sort of work when clients say, how do you know?
I don't only need to be confident in my ability to string the words together. I need to be confident in my ability to learn the industry.
Right.
So I don't need to learn it as an expert. I'll give you an example. I've ended up a quite specialized financial services copywriter, which is weird because I'm not a chartered accountant. I'm not an auditor or an actuary. I've never studied finance. I don't have a BCom. And yet I specialize in writing for the financial services industry. Now, is that because I have an expert level understanding of the equity market, amortization, and dividend yield? No. But am I confident that I can learn enough about whatever the focus is to give a layperson the relevant messaging coherently? Yes. So I can string the words together confidently. Absolutely. That's a sort of hygiene factor. That's an entry level requirement for what I do. But I'm also confident in my ability to get to know whatever the niche is sufficiently to write about it. And when clients say, how do you know? My answer is either I know because I've researched it or spent 20 years writing about it for other people, or I know that I can learn enough about it to write well for you.
I like that, because sometimes some people think they're the only person that knows, the intricacies of their industry. Anybody else who's coming in is probably not going to be as informed as they are. But as you say, it's a matter of researching and, obviously putting things together like that. So you've gone on and trained thousands of other professionals, in this sort of industry. And in what you do, what sort of patterns do you see that most people don't notice about why communication breaks down?
It's the same thing all the time. It's so strange because it doesn't matter which country I'm teaching in or what kind of company it is, whether it's a startup or a multinational. It doesn't matter if it's comms people or strategic thinkers or frontline staff. The same thing breaks down every time. And that is inadequate attention to the planning beforehand. So if you don't stop to think about who the audience is and what your specific objective is and what the outcome is that you require from the messaging, then whether or not the communication succeeds is an absolute fluke. It's could go either way. The minute you stop for just a few minutes before constructing any message or piece of comms or content or copy, and think about, who am I writing to? What do I want them to understand? And what do I want them to do? Then suddenly it's a very different ball game. So inattention to clear thinking beforehand is where most things fall down. It's the rush to write something, to fill the page, before a little bit of planning ahead of time. Planning is everything. I spend much more time on the planning of any piece of writing than I do the writing itself. The writing is very quick if the planning is done properly.
Absolutely. It goes without saying, that statement that says, if I'm given an hour to cut down a tree, I would spend 40 minutes of that hour
sharpening the axe. Yes, exactly right.
Oh, great stuff. And I feel like if you're not writing to the right kind of person with the right kind of pain, all you're just doing is just spraying and praying and hoping something lands in the whole communication there. Now, you mentioned an acronym that is of importance, or is a fascinating one, which is the SEO side of things. But with the advent of AI and with the advent of all these other different LLMs that we have, is this still a particularly relevant skill set that people need to know or learn or be aware of?
I think optimization in general is a critical skill set, whether it's search engine optimization or artificial intelligence optimization. I think the copy, content, and comms we create have to be optimized. But I'd like to add a third layer to that, and that's human. You have to optimize for humans, because it's all very well Google liking it, but if humans don't like it, they're not going to buy. And it's all very well the LLMs liking it, but if humans don't like it, they're not going to buy. So yes, we have to optimize. We have to optimize for search engines, and it's much easier than it used to be. When I started out, it was very complicated and highly technical, and we had to use synonyms for everything, and the metadata was a pain to create, and page titles and tags. It was just nightmarish. Now it's very, very easy, and a lot of platforms have this plugged in anyway. So organic SEO is much easier than it was. A lot of my clients are asking for AI optimization, which is something worth focusing on, absolutely. But LLMs are clever, and they are designed to aggregate based on content that has been optimized already organically by SEO. So the thing to focus on, I think, is some combination of search engine optimization, AI optimization, and human optimization. The copy, content, and comms must be sticky for the human brain. Otherwise, no one will sell anything to anyone, and we will all just talk at each other.
What I like about that is, obviously, it's just the goals have changed, but the game is still the same. And obviously, we're on our way to educate our audience, which I have been trying to change the narrative around SEO to just spell the word simply educating others. So it doesn't matter.
Yes.
So once you
can I have that on a t-shirt, please? A t-shirt. You need merch. I want merch that says simply educating others prosper. Yes, please. Thank you. Merch.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for acknowledging that, because everybody is just so caught up in what AI can and cannot do. But if you're just educating your audience, about who you are, what it is that you do, why now, everything else just falls into place. And I think, this is where we're headed. Now, with communication, it just doesn't happen online. It happens offline. It happens, right now we're communicating and things of that nature. Somebody might be watching this and thinking, oh, so where does Tiffany come into the picture? Can you maybe let us know what it is that you do to work with people now, and how you're actually making a difference in businesses?
So I do three things predominantly. I'm a writer and consultant. So either I write the stuff myself, or I consult with the people in the corporate who write the stuff. And when I say corporate, I just mean it's usually B2B companies, but of all possible sizes. So they'll either call me in and say, this is the problem we have, and I will propose a way to solve the problem using writing. Or they will say, this is the problem we have, and I will propose strategic consultation where we solve the problem together. And sometimes the way we do that is through writing that is either done by me or done by the team in-house. And so you can see there the obvious segue is to training. So the second thing that I do is I train corporate teams, founders, leaders, managers, on how to communicate better across a variety of things, whether that is website copy, newsletters, LinkedIn, social media, speeches, scripts, the intranet, apps, all manner of anything that has writing in it that isn't a book, I will teach a company team how to do. And so there's that element of things. And then again, another natural segue to speaking. I realized a couple of years ago that the most satisfying way to train a large group of people quickly is if you increase the number of people in the room. So I moved from just training in a boardroom to training on a stage. And so now I go all over South Africa, all over Africa. Well, not far enough. I'd love to do more Africa, but it has been a lot of the UAE, Asia, the UK, the US. And I speak about writing and writing related things on stages. So those are the three things that I offer. And those are the three things that clients typically ask me for, either a writing intervention, a speaking intervention, or a training intervention.
Absolutely. And obviously, thank you so much for letting us know that these days where most of, the connection that a business has is from their website or newsletter, or maybe from their personal brand on LinkedIn, all of those aspects really need to be tackled. What would be the best way that people can get a hold of you if you're not jet setting in the UAE, across Africa, like you just said?
People can always reach me no matter where I am. The best and quickest way is just type my name into Google, but spell it correctly. So Tiffany Markman, and you will find every possible way you can think of to reach me, whether that is my website, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. What else is there? Threads, Blue Sky. You may even find my X profile. I have a column on Medium. I publish articles all the time, which you will find online. I have a YouTube channel. So just type my name into Google and you will find me, and you can reach out via any one of those platforms and I will get back to you.
Absolutely. And obviously I will be putting all those links in the show notes so that people can actually get started on their journey. And for those that are watching right now, if you are listening well, you would notice that many people think their challenge is just communication, but often the real issue is the decision making, and as Tiffany has said, the actual research into finding out who you're writing for and what are you trying to communicate. And that spells clarity, and then obviously it gives you confidence in the way that you think. And I feel like that changes everything, because so many people are caught up in what's in their head, but they can't put it out there, and before you know it, it's all taken out of context, and whatever they say can and will be used against them on TikTok or any other social media out there. But obviously, Tiffany, you've gone on and won awards, namely you were top impact speaker in 2025 with Real Leaders, your creative business of the year and things of that nature. What have these accolades now sort of given you or shown you, towards the journey that you're on right now?
I always feel like a bit of a what's the word? Like a bit of a wannabe when I say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. The thing about awards, and you hear this at the Oscars every year, is that it's a privilege just to be nominated, obviously, right? It's a privilege to be recognized, even if you don't win. Winning is cool because it's a credibility marker. It's a signal of social proof for other clients. So why do I like winning awards? Because obviously, it's cool, but also because it gives clients confidence that I'm a safe bet. I also have become quite determined to win something every year, because that's how my mind works. So I won something in 2020, and I've been determined to win something every year since then. I don't want there to be a gap. So I make sure that a year does not pass without winning something. So there was a 2020, 2021, 22, 23, 24, 25. And then this year, thank goodness, I won something in January so I can relax for the rest of the year before I try to win something next year again. But I want it to be consecutive. I don't want to skip a year. I like things to be tidy. But the main reason is that it's exceptionally good marketing. It's all very well for me to say nice things about myself, and even for clients to say nice things about me is great. But for people who don't know me and who've assessed me objectively against a cohort of my peers globally, or in South Africa or in Africa, that's something. I also love winning South African awards. South Africa is a smallish pond relative to the US, relative to the UK. South Africa is a small place, and so it gives me huge pleasure to win things here. I absolutely love being South Africa's best this or South Africa's most effective. That's just the best.
Absolutely, and congratulations. And the one thing, I don't know if you feel the same way, but this is how I feel. My kids don't even know what I do because all of the work that I do stays on the computer or in the cloud somewhere. And the only sort of reflection of the participation that I've done in that particular year is at least some sort of an accolade that will be on, put on the mantle there. Otherwise, they'll just think, And in your case, you're writing for other people who go on and maybe do greater things with their business. Nothing stays with you, and you can't claim some of the work that you have done. So the only recourse that you would have is the awards that you have, and at least that is something that you can show for it. I don't know if that's
I don't know how old your kids are. They might be smaller than mine, but I have a 14-year-old who is impressed by nothing. And so I will tell you that she is not impressed by awards. She is very skeptical of awards. She's convinced that every award is a pay-to-play scenario where I've won something, but I must give them money for a big plaque or a big trophy, or she thinks awards are nonsense. She is very impressed by the work I do with bats because it makes her cool at school. And because she's a bit of a reader like me and a writer, she likes the fact that you can Google me and get hundreds of pages of results. So she's very impressed by my Google pedigree and the bats, and less impressed by the awards and that's what she's not impressed. She's 14. Nothing is impressive except Terry Pratchett,
Tiffany, I mean, even ice cream has different flavors, okay? You can't impress everyone. My little girls only think I'm good enough to take the garbage away. They don't realize I spend time speaking to cool people like yourself every single day and creating, amazing content like this. So, and speaking of your daughter, you keep revisiting her. You've actually supported a family of 6 doing the work that you love for about 2 decades, from what I gather here. What does that kind of sustainability teach us about building a business that lasts? Because you've been doing this for 21 years now, and if you're in America, you will be actually cheersing a whiskey now, because
I must clarify that my immediate family is 3. So it's my husband, myself, and my daughter. Right. But we are blessed to live in a village. And what that means is that we also live with my mom, who is, so ironically, I moved in with her when I left my job, and moved out of her home when I got married. And then 10 years later, she moved in with me. So there were only 10 years that we were separated. But now she's back. So she's with us. So that's number 4. And then we also have a family that live with us. A mother and her adult daughter who's been with me. She's 22 this year. She came to us when she was 5. And so they live with us as well. And so that makes up 6 and sometimes 7, which is the husband of the lady who lives with us, who also doesn't live with us all the time, but visits. So we are a commune, right? We're a village.
Yeah.
And this is my family. I'm blood related to 3 of them and not to the others. And it's the best way to live. Again, I think if I'd known what I was doing, I wouldn't have been brave enough to do it. It just worked out. The business grew every year. I never thought I'd be self-employed for 20 years. It just wasn't a plan I had for myself, but it's worked out. I often describe this career of mine as the gift that keeps on giving. There's plenty of work every year. I haven't had a bad month ever. It got quiet in 2008, it got quiet in 2010, it got quiet in 2020, but it always bounces back. And my family creates the structure within which all of this is possible. I have a very understanding husband who recognizes that the third party in our marriage is my diary. I have a very understanding daughter who understands that if I'm facing my laptop, she must stay out of the screen and talk to me quietly from the side. My mom still thinks that I'm going to take over the world one day, and it can't be done without a village.
Absolutely, absolutely. It takes a village to raise a kid for sure, and I like that setup that you've got on there. Now, this has been interesting, Tiffany, getting to know you and just getting to understand what it is that you do and how you are not helping people to just fix writing, but you're helping them to literally own their voice and start sounding like a grown up brand. And you've done that for yourself. You've owned your actual, work, and you have backed yourself up every year pretty much after that with awards and getting a good set of clients behind you and things of that nature. But now that we have gotten into your world, what's next? What are you working on right now that we can be excited about and we can come and celebrate with you in the next coming years or future?
Oh, I never like to think too long term. I like short to medium term goals. So at the moment, I'm working on a new keynote, which is about failure. It's called An Uninspirational Story of Failure, and it's about what we do when we fail. And it doesn't have a happy ending. So it's not about try, fail, and eventually succeed. It's about what happens when there is no success at the end. So I'm working on that keynote at the moment and hoping to deliver it in Asia in May. Which I'm very, very excited about. I'm working on the beginnings of a book. I've written several books in my early years, but nothing in the last 15 or so. So there's a very exciting nonfiction book under construction. I won't say more about that. Let's just keep it open. And those are the two sort of big things on my agenda for the next sort of 12 months. Every year I try and get more balance. I think I've become better at it in my 40s. So I don't work as hard as I used to, which is good. But really, I'd be thrilled and delighted if the coming years were much of the same.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we're already in 2026. Congratulations in advance for your award for this year. And you did mention you're putting together a book. Well, here's an invitation. When the book is ready, we would like to hear about it on the Online Prosperity Show, since you didn't give us much details right now. So I take that as a promise to come back on the show, and we're going to be talking about your book.
Gladly.
Absolutely. Now, Tiffany, this has been an incredible conversation. I mean, your life story and your experience have so much value for a lot of people that are just literally trying to, introduce clarity into their business and in the work that they do. Because what I have learned from the work that you're doing is clarity doesn't come from confidence, but confidence comes from clarity. When you know what it is that you want to do, you know where you want to head to, the rest takes shape. You just gotta, endure the road. And I can't wait to hear your keynote and book about failure, because so many books have been written about the hero's journey, where something happens at the end and people are waiting for that. But what if it doesn't? I'm coming from a place like Zimbabwe where
we are neighbors. We are neighbors. I can drive to Zimbabwe and be there within 5 hours I could be
within 5 hours. Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm really excited for the journey that you're on and the work that you're doing out there. So thank you so much for your time on the Online Prosperity Show today.
Thank you for having me.
Good stuff. For everybody that's watching or listening, if today's conversation really helped you see communication, clarity, and confidence differently, I encourage you to share this episode with somebody who needs to hear it. I mean, these are the conversations that actually change the way people think and sometimes the way people live. And if you're just joining us for the very first time, welcome. In our next episode, we're going to be talking about ideas that can genuinely lead to a happier existence. And I promise it won't be about business, so you don't want to miss this one. So make sure you subscribe on your favorite platform and you don't miss out. And obviously, Tiffany will put all your details in the show notes so that people can actually follow you and learn more from you. And as I have been repeating throughout this conversation, clarity is not a talent, it's an actual skill. And the moment you actually learn to start thinking clearly, you begin to communicate powerfully. And I think that changes everything. So for those that are watching, I've got one question for you. What's one idea you've been struggling to express clearly lately? I want you to share it in the comments. Let's start this conversation as we end this episode. I don't know what you're going to do with this information, but bye for now.